again, and welcome back to Top of the Morning. I'm your host, Simon Harrington. We have a great show for you today, talking about the art of American artist Richard Caton Woodville, and bringing that interview from Dr. Joy Hireman at the Walters Art Museum in downtown Baltimore. Don't change that remote, and we'll be right back. Top of the Morning. I'm your host, Simon Harrington. Joined here by Dr. Joy Hireman of the Walters Art Museum, and today we're discussing the topic and the art of Richard Caton Woodville, who is a great American artist. There's currently an exhibition here at the Walters Museum. Dr. Hireman, tell me about Richard Caton Woodville and his art.
Well, what's interesting about Richard Caton Woodville is that you start with very little information. He left no letters or diaries, so you really are left with the paintings themselves and with the rich context of his work. He was born here in Baltimore and lived very close to the Walters, 3 blocks south, in fact, on Mulberry Street and on Charles Street. He went to school at St. Mary's College, which was then in Seton Hill, and spent 1 year at the University of Maryland Medical School, where he really didn't study very carefully to be a doctor, is my sense, but spent a lot of time sketching and following through with his interest in being an artist. He left at the age of 20 and studied in Dusseldorf in Germany, which was a center of art activity in that period. And there he made enormous strides forward. He's a fantastic technical artist. He worked under magnification and used the tiniest of brushstrokes to make these very jewel-like paintings of realistic scenes.
Okay, and Dusseldorf, Germany, what was it that took him to Dusseldorf? I've heard in the past, about the French Museum of Art or School of Art, and Italy. Tell me why he chose Germany.
Yeah, interestingly, Germany was where it was at in the 1820s, 30s, and 40s in terms of art instruction for international artists. And Woodville joined a number of Americans there, including Emanuel Leutze, who was painting Washington crossing the Delaware, the huge canvas, 12 by 21. Was being painted in Dusseldorf, of all places, before it came back to America to be exhibited.
And his paintings, he sent them back to America for exhibitions, or to be sold?
Yeah, he sent them to New York, where they were exhibited in something called the American Art Union. They were exhibited. They were also turned into prints, and prints that were cheaply produced and in very large volumes. So his works were distributed throughout the country and were seen throughout the country. The images were very famous in their own time, and that we try to bring that across in the exhibition as well.
And so he was married when he went to Dusseldorf, I believe, and he died of a morphine overdose. Was that in Germany itself, or was that?
He left Germany in 1851 and moved to Paris, there really to not only to follow through with what was going on in Paris, because a lot of wonderful changes were happening in art in that period, but also for a relationship with a printmaking company called Goupil. Then he moved on to London and lived there and died there at the age of 30 in 1855.
Okay, and his art. Tell me about his art and how he got some of his views, how he expressed those within the works itself.
I think what is wonderful for visitors with this art is just how realistic the works are. You really get a sense of a frozen moment in time and figures interacting in very interesting and sometimes ambiguous ways. So there's humor in these works. There is a sense of a story being stopped, and you kind of wonder what happened beforehand, what would happen next. But they are rendered in a very realistic and very accessible way that I think will be very enjoyable to audiences.
What were some of the things that were happening in the time that you see in some of his works that he might have expressed?
Well, one of the things that I consider to be his genius was that he was looking at his own contemporary moment. He was looking at technological changes, the railroad, the telegraph, the penny press, and he's incorporating them into these works of art. That often can be difficult for us to see. They look very old-fashioned to us, but to be able to recognize that they were about things that were very much changing, gas lighting, the penny press, all of those things were very new when they were being painted.
Great. All right, we're going to go to our break, and again with Dr. Joy Hireman. I'm your host, Simon Harrington, and we'll come back and discuss more of the works of Richard Caton Woodville.
Every year during our television fundraiser, Children's Miracle Network hospitals celebrate hope and healing. Thanks to your generous donations, sick children can get better. So please join me, Marie Osmond, with my co-founder John Schneider, and other celebrity hosts as we share moving stories of children in your community who need your help. Tune in and celebrate hope and healing and give to your Children's Miracle Network Hospital.
Welcome back to Top of the Morning, and again I'm your host Simon Harrington, here with Dr. Joy Hireman, and we're discussing the life of Richard Caton Woodville. Dr. Hireman, tell me about Richard Caton Woodville and his art.
Richard Caton Woodville is a very interesting subject because he is so elusive. He left absolutely no letters or diaries, so everything we have comes from the works of art themselves or from the rich context of his period. Mm-hmm. He was born, as you know, in Baltimore and lived just a couple of blocks up from the Walters. The first house was overlooking the Basilica on Mulberry Street, and the second was right behind on Charles Street. He went to St. Mary's College, which at that point was in Seton Hill, still in our neighborhood, and then spent 1 year studying medicine at the University of Maryland Medical School. He wasn't meant to be a doctor. He spent most of his time sketching, and we have a wonderful sketchbook in the exhibition filled with his early works of art. Like many artists in America, he left the States to move to Dusseldorf in Germany to study art and lived there for 6 years. And what's sort of remarkable about this artist is that he sent everything that he painted that was about America back to New York to be exhibited. So you have kind of a fascinating transatlantic story happening here in the 1840s.
Okay, so tell me about Germany. You said Dusseldorf. What was it that drew him to Germany? The training with, I believe, Sohn, but Sohn, is that correct?
Absolutely, you've done your homework.
Well, and so tell me why was that? Because I have always heard of the Paris Parisian School of Art in Italy, I think.
Sure.
But I never heard of Germany.
Well, the first generation of American artists really went to London to study with Benjamin West. Woodville, being really of the second generation, went to Dusseldorf, which was and still is a very important center for art instruction.
Okay.
At that point, it was in its heyday. There was an international body of students who had gathered there, and a number of very important Americans, including Emanuel Leutze, who was painting his great Washington Crossing the Delaware in a studio in Dusseldorf. That's often a big surprise to people.
All right. Okay, so we'll be right back. And welcome back to Top of the Morning. Again, I'm joined by Dr. Joy Hireman, and we're discussing the works of Richard Caton Woodville. So, Dr. Hireman, why don't you tell me about Woodville's works and what he implemented, his meanings in his work, and how...
What's wonderful about Woodville's work is that it's very accessible visually. He was a great realist, and he worked within what we call in academic art history the genre tradition. This is depictions of everyday life, and you find people who are in taverns, who are smoking, who are playing cards, and the pictures are filled with details that give you a sense of his time. What's interesting about him is that he wanted to take this tradition and apply it to his own time, so that you find themes, if you look closely, that give you a sense of what was happening and what was changing in the cultures and in technology in the 1840s and 1850s. Remember, this was the time when the railroad was being invented or beginning to really dominate the landscape. This is the time when the telegraph was invented, when the penny press, and you find newspapers often central to his work. The penny press was being invented, and he comments on that all throughout his work. That makes it sort of fun for visitors, I think. Here you have paintings that look old, but at the same time to be reminded that when they were produced, they were about the modern moment. A little bit as if we were looking at a photograph of someone looking at an iPad and getting news about the action in Syria when you look at something like war news from Mexico.
And was he pro the advancement of technology, or was he against it?
I think
How did he feel?
like so many things, you get a sense of an ambiguous reaction to change and to political events. When he talks about the Mexican War in his most famous image, War News from Mexico, you really don't know where he stands
Right.
on a political event that really divided the nation in anticipation of the Civil War. It's hard, so he wants us to think, and that's one of the things that I hope when people come to see the exhibition, that they really will slow down and look closely at these works, think about what they might have meant in their own time, and enjoy them for their incredible technical facility.
All right, and we're going to go to break again. And welcome back to Top of the Morning. Again, we're with Dr. Hireman, and as you can see, there's lots of activity around the Walters Art Museum. But let's get back to the topic of the day. We've been discussing Richard Caton Woodville. You were telling me about his art and how the exhibit came to place, how to be.
Well, we're actually very lucky with Woodville in that he had a very small body of work. He only made 16
I saw that.
known paintings, and the Walters owns 8 of them. So we started off with an advantage on this project. We then were very fortunate to get the loan of major pieces from the Detroit Institute of Arts, from the Corcoran Gallery of Art, from the Crystal Bridges Museum of Art in Bentonville, Arkansas, and from the New York Historical Society and the New York Public Library. So, and then we have some private collectors who've also allowed us to show their Woodville works. So it really is a detective project. It's really great fun. It took me to Bridgetown, Nova Scotia and Eureka, California
Oh,
to
nice, very nice.
meet with various descendants and to pull in works of art. So it's been a wonderful, and then to pull together a wonderful advisory team of scholars from around the country, and then to work with the in-house team, exhibition team at the museum of all of the people who do the graphic design, the exhibition design, the fundraising, the marketing. It's a remarkable project. If exhibitions had credit rolls the way movies did, they would be just as long.
Right. Now, tell me about Woodville. Why is he not in the American mindset of art? I don't feel like I've really know of him before until today, and why is that, do you think?
Well, what's interesting about American art is that it's a relatively young field, and as soon as you scratch the surface of studying American art, you come across Woodville. He's painting in the same period as the Hudson River School and exhibited at the same time as Thomas Cole and Frederick Edwin Church. Other genre painters were William Sidney Mount and George Caleb Bingham. He is well known as soon as you spend any time studying American art. But one of the things that we're trying to correct here is that Americans don't know enough about the art of their own country, and we happen to have a rich cache of it here at the Walters.
Okay, yeah. And I wanted to ask you about the cartoonish, there's a sort of a cartoonish nature, I feel, to some of the art.
Mm-hmm.
I was looking at the display piece downstairs, and it just
Right.
appeared to me that one of the characters particularly really stood out to me as being cartoonish.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think that's a really insightful way of looking at this art. He definitely had a sense of humor and realized that that was one way to connect with audiences. And he was doing his art not just for people who were expert in art, but because his works were reproduced as prints and broadly distributed to people throughout America, he was trying to appeal to people who weren't used to looking at art. And he also worked with other artists in Dusseldorf who were not only easel painters, but were also political cartoonists. So you do get that wonderful humor between, say, in Politics in an Oyster House, with the old man looking out at the viewer in such a bemused way as he listens to this young guy ranting from his newspaper. Those elements are in this work, and I hope people will have fun finding them.
Yeah. Now, do you have a favorite piece?
Oh boy, that's. I think one of the favorites that I have is a very small portrait that has never been exhibited before of a woman named Maria Johnston, who was actually a real person, and she traveled to Dusseldorf with Woodville and his young wife. Woodville depicts her in sort of marvelous detail in her homeliness, but she's also the woman on the sidelines, on the margins of War News from Mexico. So from that iconic image that's so famous in American art history, we've actually been able to find the real person behind that story.
Oh, interesting. And what's the value on some? Do you have a value for any of these pieces? Do you know?
They are limitless in their value. We don't really know what their value is because they're not in the market, and that's they belong to the public, and that's really where they belong in my view.
And with exhibits like this, do you hope that the name Woodville becomes more of a household name and people value these paintings?
I hope that the Baltimore community really claims him as the most important artist to be born in Baltimore in the 19th century. That's my claim.
All right. Dr. Harmon, so the museum itself, lots of exhibits. Why don't you explain some of the exhibits that are currently here, and if somebody was to walk through the door, what would they hope to see?
The permanent collection of the Walters is world-renowned and really worth a visit. You can start from the ancient Near East, seeing mummies from Egypt and wonderful sculpture from ancient Greece and Rome, making your way through the medieval period into the 19th century Renaissance and Baroque art, which we have great old master paintings. I would want everyone to see the Chamber of Art and Wonders, which is a wonderful place, not just for adults, but for children too, that gets to the beginnings of museums, the collections that princely gentleman would put together to show the creativity across human history. We also have a great collection of Asian art in our Hackerman House, which is a great historic house here on Mount Vernon Place. So there's always a lot to see here.
And going back to Woodville himself again, sorry, he died very early, age 30 I believe was his age, from a morphine overdose. Was he an addict to drugs, or was this a medical?
Would that we knew. They're really, because there's so little written record, and he left no letters, and there's really no way of knowing. All we know is that he died of an overdose of morphine, medicinally taken. Now that could mean that his toe was run over by a carriage and he was being treated for pain, or it could indicate some other connection with that drug. We do know that towards the end of his life, his art production, really slowed down. So is that an indication of something else going on? Perhaps.
Well, how long would a piece like a Woodville piece of art have taken him to put together and to paint?
Again, we would love to know. One thing we did find out is that he did work under magnification. And so things would have taken a long time to create.
All right, and we're going to go to break again. So I'm your host, Simon Harrington. Welcome back. We've had a great day, and again with Dr. Joy Harriman, and we're talking about the Walters Art Museum itself. Tell me some of the things about the museum.
Well, what's sort of fun about this project is that the museum is really known for its ancient art, its medieval art, its Asian art, and this looking at American art in this exhibition will be a surprise for visitors. It actually takes us back to the time of our founder, William Walters, who actually was a collector of contemporary art in his own time, the 1840s, 1850s. So it is a chance to look to our roots and to kind of cast a new eye on the Walters collection.
Okay, and yourself, Dr. Harriman, what's your background and your position here at the museum?
Oh, I wear two hats. I have been at the Walters for 22 years, if you can believe it, mostly running the development operations, so the membership programs, the special events, the grants, and all of the fundraising that keeps this museum going. But at the same time, I'm an art historian, and my field is American art, and I've been very interested in Woodville for many, many years. So that the opportunity to put a spotlight on him has been a great amount of fun.
And the museum building itself, how long has this been in existence?
And this building was opened to the public in 1911. It was commissioned by Henry Walters, and he actually eliminated a smaller gallery that had been on this footprint earlier when he made a large acquisition and he needed more space. And he commissioned this glorious room, which is really one of the great rooms in America, I think.
It's a beautiful museum. I was looking around before. It's beautiful.
Great. And what's wonderful about the Walters is that it was given for the benefit of the public, so that it belongs to the citizens of Baltimore and to this region.
And what are some of the other programs that you have coming up? Some of the other exhibits, or some of the evenings at the museum itself?
Well, what I'd love everyone to really know is that we're now open every Thursday evening from 5 until 9, and the exhibition, which will be free of charge during that time. It's a time when you can come and have a glass of wine, have a coffee, a sandwich, and spend some time after work in the galleries.
Sure. Future exhibits?
Oh boy, we're turning our attention to contemporary art from the Baltimore community in the summer, and in next fall we'll be looking at Egyptian art. So there's always something new and interesting going on at the Walters.
Great, and are you part of that, putting those together as well?
I'm always behind the scenes.
Dr. Harriman, Thank you very much for your time today.
It's been
Wonderful
my great
exhibit,
pleasure.
wonderful museum. And for Top of the Morning, I'm your host, Simon Harrington.
I'm nuts about downtown Baltimore's West Side. Hello, I'm John Waters, and I'm proud to say that Baltimore has always been my home. It's the inspiration behind all my films, including Hairspray, Crybaby, Serial Mom, and A Dirty Shame. Let me tell you, there are not a more eccentric, monumental, eclectic, intriguing, and character-filled 28 blocks anywhere in the world, and I'm here to prove it to you. The Walters Art Museum is also known internationally, featuring an interactive experience exploring 55 centuries of art. Like nearby Arena Players, the nation's longest continuously running African American community theater. I'm also a big fan of century-old Antique Row, where New York dealers come to buy and later mark up their purchases sky high for their Manhattan buyers. On that same block sits the U.B. Blake National Jazz Institute, housing memorabilia from Baltimore jazz greats like Billie Holiday and, of course, UB himself. The West Side is also where the Maryland Historical Society calls home, with its many Baltimore artifacts, including the original manuscript of the Star-Spangled Banner, and NIPR, the RCA, the Baltimore Development Corporation, and the 40-plus members of West Side Renaissance, led by Peter Angelos, that are ensuring the success of what the New York Times calls the largest revitalization plan of its kind in the country. And it's all happening in this one neighborhood called downtown Baltimore's West Side. Infectious, fashionable, full of vim and Baltimore vigor, I walk the West Side streets these days in amazement at what it's become. I'm nuts about downtown Baltimore's West Side. You will be, too.
Right. I hope you enjoyed the show today and learned something about our American artist Richard Caton Woodville from the Walters Art Museum. I'm your host for Top of the Morning, Simon Harrington.